Welcome. Here, we dig into the source material, the articles, the data, all of it, and break it down so it makes sense. And today, we're diving into a story that is absolutely shaping India's future.
We're looking at a constitutional process that is, right now, threatening to set off a huge political firestorm in the world's biggest democracy.
You've got leaders from India's southern states, and they are sounding the alarm. They're framing what should be a routine administrative task as a real battle for their political survival.
Their argument is pretty straightforward. They feel like they're being punished for actually succeeding at a national goal, and they're worried that the very fabric of Indian federalism could be at risk. So how did we even get to this point? Really, how can something as simple as redrawing a map threaten to tear a country apart? Well, to get that, we need to understand a process called delimitation.
The entire massive conflict really just boils down to this one very powerful and, as you'll see, super contentious word: delimitation. Okay, so what is it? In theory, it's just a routine democratic health checkup. It's meant to make sure everyone's vote carries roughly the same weight. It's all about that core democratic promise of one person, one vote. Simple, right?
Well, here's where it gets complicated. Back in 1976, the government basically hit a giant pause button. They froze the number of parliamentary seats each state gets, locking them to population numbers from way back in 1971. And that temporary freeze, well, it's now been in place for 50 years, and it's about to expire. Now, you might be asking, why would they do that? The official thinking was to encourage family planning across the country. They didn't want to penalize states that were doing a good job controlling their population by taking away their political power. It was a well-intentioned idea, but, half a century is a long time. So what do you think happens when a country's political map is frozen in time for 50 years, while its population keeps growing and moving? You get a huge democratic imbalance.
This has led to a major problem called malapportionment. It's a fancy term, but it means something really simple and pretty undemocratic. Where you live in India today literally determines how much your vote is worth. That promise of one person, one vote, it's kind of broken.
And just look at these numbers. It's wild. In a northern state like Bihar, a single member of parliament represents more than 3 million people. But then you go down to a southern state like Kerala, and an MP there represents just 1.75 million. So a vote in Kerala today carries almost twice the political weight of a vote in Bihar.
So what happens when this freeze is finally lifted? The projections show a massive, and I mean seismic, shift in political power from the south of the country to the north. The northern states, places like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, that have had higher population growth, they're projected to gain a whopping 43 seats combined. That would dramatically increase their influence in parliament.
And on the flip side, the southern states, the ones that actually did a great job implementing that national policy of population control, they stand to collectively lose 24 seats. That's a huge reduction of their voice on the national stage.
So all of this data really sets the stage for a fundamental clash. It's a conflict where you have two totally legitimate but completely opposing arguments.
And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the standoff. The southern leaders are essentially saying, hey, we played by the rules, we controlled our populations, we grew our economies, and now you want to punish us for it? But the northern leaders are saying, look, it's about a fundamental democratic right. More people means more representation. That's just how it's supposed to work.
So, with such a deep and principled divide, is there a way forward? Are there any potential solutions that could prevent a full-blown constitutional crisis?
Well, there are a few ideas being talked about. One is, just kick the can down the road again, extend the freeze. Another idea is to make the parliament bigger, add so many new seats that no state actually loses any representatives, even though the power would still shift north. And then you get into more complex fixes, like creating new formulas that don't just count people, but also look at things like economic contribution, or maybe even looking outside India to see how places like Germany or the EU handle this kind of thing. In the end, this isn't really just about numbers on a map. The whole delimitation challenge is forcing India to ask itself a really fundamental question about its identity. What's more important, the raw power of population or the principle of a federal partnership that ensures all of its diverse parts have a real meaningful voice? The answer to that question is going to define India's political future.